Hello, bruvs. This is The Madness of Mary Lincoln by Jason Emerson. We're at the end of the book. This is the epilogue and unpublished letters, and I think there's an appendix as well. So let's get to it. This would be chapter 11 if there were a chapter assigned to it, but as of, not as of the writing, but as is, it's an epilogue. The mental illness of Mary Lincoln is a fascinating historical study that has rarely been explored from a psychiatric viewpoint. Despite a historiography of some 80 years, most historians and writers have eschewed the medical perspective, focusing instead on historical, moral, legal, political, and social viewpoints. A true understanding of her illness cannot be understood, however, without determining what her mental aberrations consisted of. The historical evidence shows that Mary Lincoln most likely suffered from manic depressive illness, now called bipolar disorder. She suffered intense mood swings during her youth and early adulthood, which increasingly transformed into periods of depression and during acutely traumatic episodes such as the death of a loved one, severe depression that went beyond the bounds of what psychiatrists would call a normal grief reaction. Numerous sources offer evidence that during Mary's marriage to Abraham Lincoln, her symptoms escalated to include delusions and hallucinations, such as her constant fear of fires and burglars, and the compulsive spending that so characterized her later life. This continued during the White House years, along with the emergence of delusions of persecution and poverty. The assassination of her husband clearly unhinged Mary, and her mood swings and depressive episodes became more intense and more frequent. Her delusions and hallucinations became more pronounced, as did her spending, until her commitment to Bellevue Place Sanitarium. Her symptoms then turned to violence, first with her 1875 suicide attempt, and then in the form of threats against Robert's life and her acquisition of a pistol. What little is known about her years in Europe seemed to show a lessening in the severity of her condition, but her mood swings, depressive episodes, and senseless spending continued. For a professional psychiatrist's viewpoint on Mary Lincoln's condition, see Appendix 3. The first attempt to psychiatrically examine Mary Lincoln's mental state was Dr. W. A. Evans's Mrs. Abraham Lincoln, a study of her personality and her influence on Abraham Lincoln, published in 1932. Evans, a physician and medical school professor who also consulted other specialists in mental diseases, sought to examine and diagnose Mary's mental state through her psychology. His belief was that to truly understand. All right, that cut off. Evans did not limit himself to the actual instances. Wait, let's read that again. His belief was that to truly understand Mary's life and actions, one must understand her personality, which included her mentality and even her physical health. Evans did not limit himself to the actual instances of Mary's insanity, but also examined her family background, life history, life traumas, and physical health to explain what he concluded to be an emotional but not mental insanity. I agree. She had numerous lives lost. Her babies, not babies, but young sons died. I believe her mother died when she was young. Her husband was assassinated right next to her. What do you expect? Mary had a mild emotional insanity, which caused her to act as does a case of schizophrenia. Living alone, apart, and letting the world take care of itself, Evans wrote, yet because she was a victim of her emotions, she was not responsible for what she said or did or for what people said about her, he concluded. Evans's conclusions for Mary's insanity were weakened, however, by his defense of her. In fact, Evans nearly contradicted himself and unwittingly gave ammunition to later Mary defenders, as his conclusions about the degree of her mental instability were marred by caveats, rationalizations, and nuances that grew as the book moved towards its end. He stated that her mania for money, extravagance, and miserliness were well known to psychiatrists and present in many people who are accepted as normal. And while not denying her mental condition, Evans also stated that Mary's belief in spiritualism, thought at that time by some doctors to be both a cause and a manifestation of insanity, militated against her at the time of her trial. In January 1941, Lieutenant James A. Brussel, U.S. Army Medical Corps, the chief psychiatrist at Fort Dix, New Jersey, published a psychiatric study of Mary Lincoln in the Psychiatric Quarterly. Brussel studied Mary's life from childhood to death and stated that her case was difficult to diagnose, as it was replete with etiological factors running the gamut from congenital defects to adverse living conditions and complicating trauma. Brussel found psychotic symptoms of hallucinations, delusions, terror, depression, suicidal intentions and attempts, ideas of persecution, and outbursts of irritability, rage, and overactivity. His diagnosis was that Mary was a victim of migraine, although he stated that epilepsy, or at least an epileptic equivalent, was possible. He ruled out psychoneurosis, manic depressive psychosis, and schizophrenia. 25 years later, another psychiatrist, John M. Suarez, published a case study of Mary Lincoln in the American Journal of Psychiatry. Suarez concluded that Mary had a lifelong personality disorder that erupted in 1875 into full-blown paranoid psychosis with manic, schizophrenic, and involutional features. While the successive tragedies in Mary's life led to her breakdown, Suarez declared there was not enough evidence to support the hypothesis that there was a serious overt psychopathology, at least up until her time at the White House. Roberts' past in the insanity episode lay in his emotional distance from his mother, Suarez found. Her great anger toward him for abandoning her, which became so apparent during and after the commitment, was hinted at earlier in her obsessive concern for his health. Despite lack of evidence and in the face of bona fide assurances, Suarez wrote, there is little doubt that she would be committed by any court today. She was clearly a danger to herself and others. Hey, motherfucker. Don't you ever come here and say that. The articles by both Brussel and Suarez, with their expert psychiatric diagnoses, are invaluable resources for any study of Mary Lincoln's illness. Build upon Evans's foundation with increasingly modern understanding of psychiatry. Sadly, both studies have lain completely unknown or ignored by subsequent historians and in historiographies of the topic. The only other medical examination of Mary's case occurred in a 1999 article in the Journal of the History of Medicine and Allied Sciences, Mary Lincoln's Final Illness, a Medical and Historical Reappraisal by Norbert Hirschhorn and Robert G. Feldman. This article was an important contribution to the insanity trial historiography because it appraised Mary Lincoln's illness from a physiological viewpoint, something only slightly touched upon by Evans and Suarez. Based upon Mary's medical history as written by her physicians, observations from friends and relatives, and Mary's own words, Hirschhorn and Feldman concluded that in the last decade of her life, she suffered intense pain from a progressive and fatal disease that was misinterpreted as madness. Mary suffered from a syndrome known as tabes dorsalis, a form of chronic spinal cord disease, they concluded. This disease would account for all of Mary's physiological symptoms during the 1870s, lancinating pain throughout her body, incoordination in walking, especially downstairs, narrowing of vision, ulcers on her feet, urinary incontinence, and swelling of joints. The disease could have been caused by syphilis, or more probably by prolonged and untreated diabetes. Hirschhorn and Feldman stated, how did this physical condition affect her mental state? Given the wide spectrum of classified mental and character disorders, the question has no meaning, they wrote. In any case, no global diagnosis is feasible, only from the historical data. Yes, the authors did see her behavioral and physical symptoms imputed, yet the authors did see her feasible and physical symptoms imputed as insanity during her trial as having their origins in tabes dorsalis. I'm not sure how to say that. I'm guessing tabes dorsalis, whatever it is. They do not use this diagnosis to excuse her bizarre behavior and, in fact, attribute her acute anxiety, insomnia, and delusions to a condition that most resembles post-traumatic stress disorder, probably coinciding with the 10th anniversary of President Lincoln's assassination, which she witnessed firsthand, sitting right next to him. In recent years, some non-medical historians have suggested their own diagnoses for Mary's condition as well. Michael Burlingame declared she suffered from manic depression, although she showed symptoms of borderline personality disorder as well. Deborah Hayden declared Mary's symptoms to be the result of syphilis. Jean Baker asserted that Mary's delusions in March 1875 were not medically based, but actually a premonition or a spiritualistic, self-induced trance caused by her use of chloral hydrate, with the vindictiveness of a male chauvinist society to blame for her commitment. I agree with that last part. Mark E. Neely and R. Gerald McMurtry, in the most detailed examination of Mary's case up to that point, avoided any sort of medical diagnosis or understanding altogether. Instead, they contented themselves with Mary's own confession that she was insane in the spring of 1875 due to her use of chloral hydrate and the effects of her physical illness. Like Baker, they also faulted the contemporary medical profession's prejudice against women, although they did not fault the medical evidence used against her. Interpretations of the part Robert played. You are the tree of time, eh? All right, bruv. Interpretations of the part Robert played in his mother's insanity episode have varied from indifference to support to downright animosity. The current interpretation that holds sway in the popular mind is that Robert was a rapacious, avaricious, cold-hearted snob who detested his mother and put her away to rid himself of her and steal her money. The historical evidence, however, completely disproves this. That evidence, found in letters and papers spread among archival repositories and seldom and then only selectively used and edited in disparate secondary mother in 1875, or a lot of the letters from her and him, in which she called him basically every name in the book, for committing her to an insane asylum. It proves him to have been a man of his time with a reticent demeanor, a private personality, and a Victorian sensibility of manly duty. It proves that his motives were not vile but honorable, that he took action only as a last resort, and that it was an action that pained him considerably. Disagree. I mean, considering that this guy found the trunk with the lost letters, the supposed lost letters, which were stuffed away in a trunk, and then he was allowed to use them to write this book, shows you that he has a bias towards Robert Lincoln, which makes sense because he profits off it. Of course, Robert was not a perfect man and should not be so construed. His patience was not infinite, and at times his exasperation at his mother was evident. His refusal to unconditionally lavish concern and attention on her, as she both desired and to a certain extent emotionally and psychologically needed, may be faulted as too much emotional reserve, a manifestation perhaps of his staunch Victorian sensibilities that certainly did not help the situation. His logical lawyer's mind also made mistakes that a more seasoned man might not have made, such as his intention to have his mother arrested before her trial and his way of dealing with Myra and James Bradwell. The varied opinions and explanations for Mary's mental illness show that her case still intrigues laymen and historians 125 years after her death. In fact, one of the few things non historians know about Mary Lincoln today is that she was crazy. Regrettably, the academic debate about Mary's insanity and its causes has devolved in recent years to a disrespectful argument of he said, she said between defenders of Mary and defenders of Robert. This is not only unfortunate but unnecessary. To declare Robert an honorable, loving son is not to attack or demean Mary Lincoln. This is one of the primary roadblocks to a true understanding of the insanity event that has been part of the popular thinking for decades. To defend either Robert or Mary does not make it a requirement to defile the other. Mary Lincoln deserves understanding for her horribly traumatic life and her psychiatric illness. She deserves empathy and not a little pity for the trial she endured, which began with the death of her mother and ended only in her own death. Mental illness is not something actively sought, and we cannot blame Mary for her irrationalities, nor can we blame Robert for dealing with his mother in a way he deemed most necessary and proper. The student of history must not make conclusions outside of historical context. This is the principal mistake made in regard to Robert Lincoln. His personality, his motivations have never been considered in their proper Victorian attire. He burned the letters. Don't listen to this guy. But when they are, and when he is given a fair standard to measure against, there can be no doubt that Robert Lincoln was an honorable man who loved his mother. Likewise, when examining the evidence, there can be no doubt that Mary Lincoln suffered from serious mental illness. Her family, friends, and doctors treated her with love and respect, but they were firm in their commitment to the alleviation of her troubles. Would Abraham Lincoln have committed his wife to an asylum if he had lived past his presidency? If necessary, it is possible that he would have. We know that he once threatened her with commitment. The natural course of manic depressive illness is that it worsens over time, so Mary's illness might have progressed even if her husband had lived. However, it was his presence that supported her through many trials and traumas, and if he had lived, Mary might never have spun out of control as she did. Not only did the assassination dramatically unhinge her, but in losing Lincoln, she lost her most solid anchor to sanity. As she said, for more than 20 years, Lincoln was always lover, husband, father, and all to me. Truly my all. And as Reverend Reed said in Mary's eulogy, when Abraham died, Mary died as well, only much more slowly. And I disagree with this guy's verdict because, like I said, he was indebted to the Lincoln Museum or whoever was in holding on to these letters, and he even admits in this book that Robert Lincoln, who was obviously in charge of Abraham Lincoln's estate, burned many letters that were that looked disfavorably upon his mother, but in that vein, most of them were written to him, condemning him for putting her into an insane asylum because she was overspending her money and he didn't want her to go broke, and it was an embarrassment to the family. So I think he was embarrassed of her actions. I mean, the widow of a president who was shot in a theater And she was the witness to it. I mean, what do you expect? Anyway, Appendix 1, unpublished Mary Todd Lincoln letters. Hello, Bobs. These 25 letters span the years 1872 to 1878, from 3 years before to 3 years after Mary Lincoln's institutionalization. Mary wrote 20 of these letters, 17 to Myra Bradwell and 3 to James Bradwell. Of the remaining 5 letters, 2 were written by Myra Bradwell, 1 by James Bradwell, 1 by Elizabeth Edwards, and 1 by Dr. R.J. Patterson. Also included as part of Mary Lincoln's 1873 will, drafted by James Bradwell, which, like the letters, had disappeared from history's view. Of the 25 letters, there are photographs of 7 of Mary's handwritten originals, in whole or in part, copies of 8 in Myra Bradwell's handwriting, written on Chicago Legal News letterhead dating to sometime in or prior to 1894 when she died, and copies of 3 in Myra Pritchard's handwriting dating probably to 1928. The other 7 letters are found only in the unpublished Pritchard manuscript, The Dark Days of Abraham Lincoln's Widow, as revealed by her own letters, based on the letters Mrs. Pritchard had in her possession until 1928. None of the letters are originals in Mary Todd Lincoln's handwriting, although their authenticity is not in doubt. Mary Harlan Lincoln, who was Robert Lincoln's wife, hired Brett C. Farrar, examiner of questioned documents with the United States Treasury Department, to examine the letters and ascertain their legitimacy. Mr. Farrar obviously concluded the letters genuine, as Mary's purchase of the letters from Myra Pritchard was subject to that authentication. Interestingly and sadly, Myra Pritchard owned even more Mary Lincoln letters that, quoted in her manuscript, are found in the tower's trunk. She explained in Part 9 of her manuscript that those letters, written after 1878, add nothing to the record I have sought to perpetuate here. They are sweet, chatty letters of her travels and her friends. In none of them does she mention the gray days of the past, and to publish them would, I think, be inexcusable prying into Mary Todd Lincoln's intimate affairs. Myra Pritchard's daughter, Margarita, destroyed all the Mary Lincoln letters in her family's possession in 1951. For more on the sale and destruction of these letters, see Appendix 2. These letters derive importance not only from their relation to Mary's insanity trial, but also to their mere existence. For, as the compilers of Mary's collected letters wrote, letters written by Mary Lincoln in the period between 1871 and 1876 today are the rarest of items. Prior to the finding of the letters in the tower's trunk and the Pritchard manuscript, only 10 such letters were known to exist. Some of the people mentioned in these letters are referred to nowhere else in the entire historiography of Mary Lincoln's life, including her collected letters. My own research, as well as consultation with the curators of the Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and other Lincoln experts, has uncovered some, but unfortunately not all of these identities. In January 2007, the Towers family donated their father's Lincoln papers to the Library of Congress, being desirous that the general public should have access to this unprecedented cache of materials. Mary Lincoln's lost letters, as well as hundreds of documents pertaining to Robert Todd Lincoln, his family, and his work to preserve his father's memory, now can be viewed in the library's manuscripts division reading room. Note on the text: all transcriptions are based on photographs of letters and handwritten copies where possible, and otherwise on the text of Myra Pritchard's manuscript, with her edits and punctuation changes. November 1st, 1872. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, please inform me what has become of your own dear self. I am very anxious to see you and wish you would call in a day or two. I can scarcely understand your neglect, dear kind friend. Come very soon, and present my kindest regards to your good husband and your daughter. Before 3 days have passed, I want to have one of our old fashioned chats together. With ever so much love, believe me, always truly yours, Mary Lincoln. January 26th, 1873. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, how much I regret to say to you that I am suffering for the last 2 days with a severe headache. What's up, Rob? Which the doctor tells me may settle in my head if I do not remain very quiet. I rise out of bed to tell you this, for it is quite a source of annoyance to me that I shall not be able to see you tomorrow. But you may be sure, dear Mrs. Bradwell, that as soon as I shall be able, I will call for you to claim you for a few hours. I'm not. I give a. You jinx me, you bastard. I don't care that nobody's watching. How many times I gotta tell people that I don't give a shit who watches? You cannot begin to know what a treat it is for me to hear you converse and be near you. The doctor objects to my calling to see dear Mrs. Swisshelm at present, lest it may renew my nervousness in recalling past and happier times. Before the week closes, we will surely meet. Most affectionately, your friend, Mary Lincoln. May 6th, 1874. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, your kind note from Mobile was received several days since, and I would have sent you an earlier reply had it not been for quite a severe attack of illness, and this is the first day I am out of bed for 5 days. Such terrible weather we have had. I am delighted that you are enjoying yourself so very much and trust that you will return to us with your health entirely restored. Today is lovely here, and I am even anticipating the doctor's afternoon call with his sugar pellets and harmless draughts as a pleasant variety to the monotony of the day. Our good friend Mrs. Swisshelm has been confined to the house with severe quinsy, and you may be sure that I am missing her greatly. Her quaint style is perfectly charming to me, and such a relief to me from my remembrance of the artificial world, with which, in former and so much happier days, I was constantly surrounded. This note, I fear, will scarcely reach ere you are leaving for Chicago. With a word of love, believe me, your devoted friend, Mary Lincoln. St. Augustine, Florida, February 20th, 1875. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, your kind letter was received some time since, and although I have not replied to it, believe me truly that you are very frequently in my thoughts, and I have so often wished we could be together in this sunny clime. I am now looking down upon a yard with its roses, white lilacs, and other flowers. Although it is raining, and we have had a good deal of rain, in its soft, dreamy, light fashion, since the middle of January, I remained too much out on my balcony, took a severe cold, had much inward and outward fever for 3 weeks, and one day when it was raging at its height, I told my nurse to pack up a small trunk and valise, and we would leave town. So, on the 11th of February, we started for this place, 5 hours distant from Jacksonville by boat and railway. On board the steamer, I met three or four choice Philadelphia friends, ladies and gentlemen, and they insisted on my joining them, and instead of a modest journey of 5 hours to St. it proved 4 days and nights on the boat. If these comme persons from the north generally, and the most charming scenery on the celebrated Ocklawaha River could give pleasure, then it certainly was mine. Words would fail in description going from the broad St. John's into the narrow streams, with scenery such as is seldom met with in this world. Such pens as W.C. Bryant and others have given minute details of the voyage. Scribner's November Monthly speaks of it, and Harper dwells at great length upon it. How much we will have to say to each other when we meet. From this most unexpected excursion I came here. I have been here 5 days, 3 of which have been passed in bed. For you may be well assured that the fever in my veins must run its course. but 2 bright days I have emerged from its wandering over this quaint and most interesting place. My first visit was, of course, to the ancient fort, and my wondering head was in every prison nook until we came to the one whose entrance was excavated, I believe, in 1835, where 2 iron cages were found, one now said to be in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, hooked to the wall where history records, and the sergeant repeats the story that 2 prisoners were enclosed in these same cages, walled in, left to their fate, with God alone to be merciful to them. The prison, of course, is in darkness except the dim light held by the sergeant. I entered the fearful place, and how I came out of it, and how I have suffered in mine, since our merciful Heavenly Father alone knows the wrongs of time will be redressed in a brighter world. My son writes me that the winter has been terribly cold, and my good friend and your dear husband, how is he getting along, and how is his health this winter? What would I not give to see you again? My pen, as you perceive, refuses its office. With much love to you and yours, believe me, most affectionately yours, Mary Lincoln. Hello, Robs. Wednesday, July 28th, 1875, Batavia, Illinois. My dear friend, Judge Bradwell, may I request you to come out here just so soon as you receive this note. Please bring out your dear wife, Mr. William Sturgis. Please bring out your dear wife, Mr. William Sturgis. All right. I don't know what the hell that means. And any other friend. Can you not be here tomorrow on the noon train? Also bring Mr. W.F. Story with you. I am sure you will not disappoint me. Drive up to the house. Also telegraph to General Farnsworth to meet you here. With much love to Mrs. Bradwell, believe me, truly yours, Mary Lincoln. Please pardon me if I mention that I will meet the expenses of your trip. ML sideways on front page in the event of Judge B not receiving this note in time. Please come out on at afternoon train. ML. Chicago Legal News Company, 151 and 53 Fifth Avenue, Chicago, July 30th, 1875. Honorable John T. Stewart. Dear Sir, I saw Mrs. Lincoln at Batavia on yesterday. She desired me to write to you and say that she very much wants to see you and would like you to visit her as soon as you can, as she feels lonesome and that the restraint of the place is unendurable. I believe a visit from you would do her good, and I hope you may be able to make it. Mrs. Lincoln's general health has greatly improved. She spoke of Mrs. Edwards in the kindest terms and expressed the wish that she might visit her at Batavia, and said that she would like to return to Springfield with her and make a visit. I believe such a visit would result in good to Mrs. Lincoln and do no one any harm. Dr. Patterson said of all the patients he ever had at the retreat, Mrs. Lincoln had given him the least trouble. I am very truly yours, James B. Bradwell. Chicago Legal News Company, blah, blah, blah. Mrs. Edwards, dear madam, July 30th, 1875. Mrs. Edwards, dear madam, I have just returned from a visit to your dear sister, Mrs. Lincoln. She desires me to write to you, asking you to come up and visit her and expresses a wish to return with you to Springfield. She feels her incarceration most terribly and desires to get out from behind the grates and bars. I cannot feel that it is necessary to keep her thus restrained. Perhaps I do not look at the matter rightly, but let this be my excuse. I love her most tenderly and feel sorry to see one heartache added to her already overburdened soul. She has always spoken most tenderly of you, and I do believe it would do her good to meet you and receive a sister's loving tenderness. Pardon the liberty I have taken in addressing you, and believe me, your sister's friend, Myra Bradwell. Springfield, August 3rd, 1875. Mrs. Bradwell, dear madam, I haste to reply to your kind note relative to my unhappy sister. My heart belled at the thought of placing her in an asylum, believing that her sad case merely required the care of a protector whose companionship would be pleasant to her. Had I been consulted, I would have remonstrated earnestly against the step taken. The judgment of others must now, I presume, be silently acquiesced to for a time, in the hope that ere long her physical and mental condition will be improved by rest and medical treatment. The sorrows that befell her in such rapid succession, and the one, so tragic, was enough to shatter the nerves and infuse the intellect of the bravest mind and heart. I regret to say that I cannot just now visit Mrs. Lincoln, being prostrated from the effects of a recent surgical operation, but will at once write to her and soothe her burdened heart, if possible, with words of love and sympathy. It is my opinion that she should be indulged in a desire to visit her friends as the surest means of restoring her to health and cheerfulness. Accept my thanks for your interest in my sister and the suggestions you have made me. Yours truly, Mrs. N. W. Edwards. Batavia, Illinois, August 2nd, 1875. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, last evening I received your two most welcome letters. It is impossible to express the delight they afforded me, and yet my disappointment is great that you do not propose coming out here until Friday. Your short stay prevented my doing what I had proposed, or rather what I had mentioned to you. Please write a letter to Mrs. Anderson of St. Louis, also Mrs. Judge May. I most earnestly entreat you, my very kind friend, to come out on Friday morning. Fail not, I beg of you. It does not appear that God is good to have placed me here. I endeavor to read my Bible and offer up my petitions 3 times a day, but my afflicted heart fails me, and my voice often falters in prayer. I have worshipped my son, and no unpleasant word ever passed between us, yet I cannot understand why I should have been brought out here. I must see some of my friends, and your noble, kind-hearted husband will see to this, I am sure, immediately. May I trouble you to write a letter to Mrs. Henry T. Blow, with a request that it will be forwarded to her in the event of her absence from St. Louis. Mrs. Bradwell, my dearest friend, I love you very much. Go to my friends, go and see Mrs. Harriet Farland, and her son, Mr. Farland, a partner of a Mr. Wing real estate agents. Go to Mrs. F. She resides at 505 Michigan Avenue. Write a note when you receive this to General Farnsworth requesting him to come and see me on tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock. Pray for me that I may be able to leave such a place as this. Let me see Judge Bradwell. I beg you to come Friday morning. I should like to see Dr. Evarts. I feel that I must have some further conversation with him. Write me, your heartbroken friend, frequently, daily, but come to me. Will you kindly bring me out some samples of black alpaca, a best quality, without luster and without cotton? Also some samples of heavier black woolen goods. Mary Lincoln. Batavia, Wednesday, August 2nd, 1870. Oh, I guess it's saying not the 2nd, but could be the 20th. I don't know. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, your letter was received on yesterday. You did not state in what manner your Sabbath was passed. I am sure it was in a profitable way. I shall certainly trust to hear from you very soon, and without doubt you will forgive me. You will not forget me. God will not fail to reward you if you do not fail to visit the widow of Abraham Lincoln in her solitude. Does not Judge Bradwell's business bring him to the country this week? And surely you will accompany him. Do not fail in, do not fail in coming to me when you receive this letter. Dear friend, as you love your heavenly Father, come to me. Bring your husband, the best of men. See Mrs. Farland and Mrs. Davis, her daughter. Please write at once to my sister, Mrs. N. W. Edwards, to come out here to see me. Explain everything, and if I have used excited words in reference to my son, may my God forgive me, and may you both forget it. Come, come, is the watchword. You will, when you receive this, write to my sister. She is a sweet, intelligent, loving woman, and Mrs. Blow is nobleness itself. Write and do not forget my pleading. With kindest love to your husband and children, believe me, most affectionately yours, Mary Lincoln. Say nothing to these people or anyone else about the alpaca. You will understand. How many more pages is this? I think I bit off more than I can eschew. Um, August 8th, 1875. My dear friend, Judge Bradwell, knowing well your great nobleness of heart, I can but be well assured that you will soon see that I am released from this place. Mrs. Bradwell will explain everything. I am sleeping very finely, and as I am perfectly sane, I do not desire to become insane. I pray you to see that justice is done immediately to me, for my mind is entirely clear and my health is perfectly good. With a high appreciation of yourself and your wife, son, and daughter, whom I love very much. Believe me, very truly, your friend, Mary Lincoln. Batavia, Illinois, Friday, August 8th, 1875. My dear friend, Mrs. Bradwell, my son has just left me after making a short call. He mentions that he wrote on yesterday to my sister, Mrs. N.W. Edwards of Springfield, requesting information of her, whether she would be willing to receive me as a visitor. I showed him her letter, and he began photo page. Considered it a little cool and perhaps general. I rather think he would prefer me remaining here in his heart. Myra Bradwell, write to my sister, Mrs. E, at once, the moment you read this. End of MB handwritten copy. Let her and beg and pray her as a Christian woman to write him. RTL urgently requesting a visit from him. End of photo page. A moment since Dr. P returned from the drive to the depot and came to my door and announced that the physician and matron of the Elgin Asylum requested to be shown my room, and I am now expecting them every moment. I submit this to you both, hoping and praying that the visit of tomorrow will not be forgotten. God in his mercy will not forget you. Also bring an exchange, if you please. Also that small key. Use your own judgment regarding the trunks. When we meet, I trust you will remember my desolation. Much I shall tell you. It is necessary to see Judge Bradwell also. I wish I could kneel down for 1 hour. My heart faints within me. Write at once a more urgent letter to my sister. Tell her to write urgently to RTI, or is that L? RTL. My sister, Mrs. C.M. Smith, has also written me, begging me to come to her. Mrs. E. appears to be his specialty. Fail me not. With much love, I remain truly yours, Mary Lincoln. Batavia, Illinois, Saturday, August, whatever, doesn't specify, 1875. My dear friend, Mrs. Bradwell, I enclose this note to you, hoping my good, kind sister, Mrs. E., will write you when this is received, and enclose this. Come to me, Mrs. B. Bring your husband and bring those 2 trunks I wrote you about. A long Russian leather trunk and the tall black trunk marked ML. Fail me not. Come to me. I long to see you both. Bring me also the key of the middle-sized trunk. I must have you near me again. Write me more plainly than you do. Write again to Henry T. Blow and his wife, and on the envelope request that the letter may be directed wherever they are. Tell Judge B, your husband, that dependence is placed upon him, and he must not forget to come to me. Write to Mr. and Mrs. C. M. Smith of Springfield. Tell Mrs. S. she must not go to sea. Come to end of copy. Chicago Legal News Company, blah, 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 Chicago, August 11th, 1875. Dear Mrs. Edwards, I came in from Batavia last Saturday afternoon, stayed with your sister Friday night, slept with her, and saw not one symptom of insanity. She slept as sweetly and as quietly as a kitten. Robert tells me if you will take her, but he will bring her down to Springfield. I do not hope you will, for she must be at liberty. Do please take her and love her, and I am sure you will not have any trouble with her, for Dr. Patterson told Mr. Bradwell and myself that he never had a patient that made him so little trouble. I am so sorry for the dear woman shut up in that place. When they tell me she is not restrained, I want to ask how they should like it themselves. I hope to hear from you soon. Kindly, Myra Bradwell. Batavia, Illinois, August 12th, 1875. To Mrs. Bradwell. In reply to your note of yesterday, I regret that your Mrs. Edwards letter has not reached you. In writing to R.T. Lincoln a few days ago, I enclosed the letter properly addressed to you and stamped, asking him to hand it to you at a visit I knew he proposed to make you, or to drop it in the mailbox. I shall do as I agreed and see that you have it as soon as possible. Respectfully, R.J. Patterson, Springfield, Illinois, June 18th, 1876. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, evening, and I am quickly demonstrating the pleasure it afforded me by replying at once. God is just. Retribution must follow those who act wickedly in this life. Sooner or later, compensation surely awaits those who suffer unjustly, if not here, in a brighter and happier world. The most villainous plot has come to a close, but on Friday morning, when the young man who perpetrated it came down to S. Springfield, when I looked into his face at a slight distance, you may be sure, I saw the reluctance with which he yielded up what he so ignominiously fought for. My poor pittance, as the world goes, so far as wealth is concerned, a widow's mite, my bonds, prayers will scarcely, end of photo, avail in his case, I think. My heart fails me when I think of the contrast between himself and my noble, glorious husband and my precious sons, who have only gone before and are anxiously, I am sure, awaiting the reunion where no more separation comes. And so I told him, RTL, he could not approach us in the other world on account of his heartless conduct to the wife of a man who worshipped me as well as my blessed sons did. This one, as my beloved husband always said, was so very different from the rest of us, prided himself on his philosophical nature, not satisfied with the fortune I bequeathed him in one morning, desiring the rest, brought false charges against me. The only trouble about me in all my sorrows and bereavements has been that my mind has always been too clear and remembrances have always been too keen in the midst of my griefs. As to Sweat, he has proved himself to be the most unmitigated scoundrel, and hell will be his portion, and doubtless he will have company. Never could such a creature approach my husband who loved me so devotedly. In the other life, I have, my dear friend, a very great favor to ask of yourself, your good husband, and the gentleman who called with you at B, the city editor of the Times. If I were to tell you three, all underlined twice, the utterances of this man, RTL, you would not refrain from writing the latter person up. Without a day's delay, your pen is sharp, so is Judge Bradwell's, so is the editor's just named. Of course, you would not wish your names to appear, but you will not fail me, I am sure. Now is the time. Have justice rendered me, my dearly loved friend. See the city editor of the Times before the close of the day when you receive this letter. I have been a deeply wronged woman by one for whom I would have poured out my life's blood. RTL's imprecations against you all have been very great, only on account of your being my true friends. Do not allow a day to pass before this writing is done and forwarded in every direction. Let not his wickedness triumph. It appears there is no law for the widow in this land, and I solemnly pledge you my word as an honorable woman that not one, underlined 3 times, word shall ever escape my lips, not a person in this, underlined twice, house or elsewhere about any article or the probable author that may be published. My sister, Mrs. E., sat by me on Friday for about an hour and a half, and in a quiet, composed and in a quiet, composed, and I trust ladylike manner, I gave expression to my feelings as to sins he had committed against the broken-hearted woman who had been called upon to give up all her dearly beloved ones for the time being only, and I asked him to look upon my bleached hair, which he had entirely created, caused with the past sorrowful year. What's up, bruv? Right, fail me not, I pray you. Any delay will be grievous. I assure you, so much I have to tell you. Kiss your sweet, lovely daughter for me. Would to heaven I could see you. Best regards to your husband. Fail me not. Always your most affectionate friend, Mary Lincoln. I enclose this article from yesterday's journal. Phillips, I believe, wrote it. Write stronger. I am sure you will. ML on front of letter. Burn this scrawl. You will, especially on the last page, be unable to decipher it, I fear. How much more do I have to go? It's got to be 10 pages easily. 178. 8 pages. Springfield, Illinois, June 22nd, 1876. Judge Bradwell, my dear friend, Sweat, has written a letter to Mr. Edwards, which has been received this morning, filled with the most voluminous falsehoods. Among other things, Sweat writes, House 375 West Washington Street is in litigation, the title being imperfect. You remember well the article I showed you, which Robert T. Lincoln drew up in regard to this house which I gave him, subject to the rent to be paid for 7 years from the time I deeded it to him. It is evidence that after these long years, it is rather late for a flaw to be in the lease. May I employ your services to examine this lease? It is evidently gotten up to prevent the monthly payment of the rent. Ascertain correctly and write me all the facts in the case. The lease was examined and considered perfect at the time of the purchase. It was purchased from a man by the name of Cook, who resides near Batavia, Illinois. I presume the people who reside in the same block feel very easy as to their titles. Cook building all the houses. There is, beyond question, the most unmitigated villainy in the case. Do not delay an hour. This involving. It appears that I must see yourself and Mrs. Bradwell. Pardon, blots and everything. Fail me not. At once write. Your friend, Mary Lincoln. Springfield, Illinois, July 7th, 1876. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, I have received no letter from you. Am I forgotten? If you ascertain any facts in relation to 375 West Washington Street, please inform me. A weak invention of the enemy, united with villainous falsehood, that Sweat should become so debased as to try and drag down to his own debased standard the son of the noblest, most honest man who ever lived. None of my treasures in the way of rich and rare presentations that were made me have been returned to me. As I truly told RTL, villains could not venture to approach my dearly beloved husband in the other world. His reply I gave you. My husband always told me that he only liked those whom I did. And when I remember the contrast between RTL and my other blessed sons, the latter so lovely, gentle, and noble, and my darling husband who worshipped me so greatly that often he said that I was his weakness. We conversed very unreservedly together when you were in S. Anything you said to me will be held sacred. Some little communications I made you please breathe to no living soul. We discussed Prof. S., who between ourselves I think amounts to very little. Come on, fucker. Where the hell was I? We discussed Professor S., who between ourselves I think amounts to very little. The subject of Mrs. E, etc., please erase from your memory. As an honorable woman, I entreat you to cast all thoughts of either of these persons from your mind, or mentioned, underlined twice. What are your plans? Believe me, I am deeply interested in them for the next 6 weeks or 2 months. Write me, dear friend, when you receive this scrawl. I am so anxious to hear from you. My pen is refusing its office, so I must bid you adieu until I hear from you. Please present my love to all your family whilst I remain your very affectionate friend, Mary Lincoln. Springfield, Illinois, July 14th, 1876, that is. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, your expected letter has been received. As to the abstract, I suppose RTL has it. Mr. Cook, from whom 375 West Washington Street was purchased, resides somewhere in the country near Chicago, doubtless transacts business in the latter place. Mr. Phillips made me a very pleasant call a few evenings since, is very vehement against two of the greatest scoundrels of the age, RTL and Sweat, the last of whom he pronounces a very profligate man, and says that my husband had become thoroughly disgusted with S. Sweat, and so expressed himself to P. Certainly, as the wife, I heard enough against S. We speak of you so frequently, would that we could daily meet, converse together. Will not Judge Bradwell return west by way of Springfield? I so much wish to see him before the sail down the bay. If you still have Mrs. Ellen Johnson colored address, please forward it to me. Also, please drop her a note to call to see you, as she would like to hear that a faithful, devoted son failed in his attempt to render a deeply bereaved mother insane. Do see her for my sake, my dear friend. Will write you again soon. My sister is well and cheerful. Too much kindness of heart is the only trouble of the other party. I assure you, easily imposed upon an innocent by those who make a representation of want of means. Others justly require what is thus bestowed. Much love to you and yours. Write, and do not act quite so mean by your silence. Affectionately yours, M.L. Pau, France, December 1st, 1876. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, you have been so frequently in my thoughts of late that I feel I must give vent to them in words which will be but a faint expression of the love and gratitude I feel towards you. When we parted in Springfield last summer, I scarcely thought it possible that we would not again meet ere my departure across the waters, but such has been the case. But that will be no reason that we cannot frequently hear from each other. I think often of you leading the occupied life you do yet sweeten. Let me read that again. I think often of you leading the occupied life you do yet sweetened by the presence of your devoted husband and two most interesting children, filling your home with so much happiness. Your daughter, I suppose, still remains at school, destined to become one of the most learned young ladies in our country. Kiss her sweet face for me and tell her that she must not apply herself too much to her books. Doubtless she enjoyed her visit east very much. Did you visit the Centennial? Doubtless she enjoyed her visit east very much. Did you visit the Centennial? I hope that I'm coming close to where the cast was abruptly ended and restarted. I believe I told you that I already had some friends residing at Pau. They received me, and I'm sure that's not the correct pronunciation of Paul. They received me with the greatest affection, and I have made some new acquaintances whom I like very much. But if I could only see you, dear, precious friend, this day, not to speak of your dear, noble husband, I will not allow myself to dwell on so pleasant a picture. This place is very beautiful to me, surrounded by the Pyrenees, whose distant peaks are already covered with snow. I sleep under 4 soft blankets, the air growing a little cool. Yet, during my 6 weeks' stay, I have never heard the least wind, one of the peculiarities I am told of the climate. The drives are simply enchanting. 2 days since I drove out 6 miles to Gao and returned, and the lovely chateaux built upon the hills, all facing the mountains. I cannot attempt to describe clearly. I am situated at one of the finest hotels, most accommodating landlord, very near the chateau of Henry IV, where I frequently wander through the grand rooms, so filled with historical interest and beyond a park of miles, with seats under the beautiful old trees. Close your doors someday, my bright, appreciative friend. Take your husband's arm, bring your talented daughter and son with you and rest. I have received some delightful letters from friends, and some distinguished ones who dwell in this land, and most of them are natives who give me so cordial a welcome to their shores. On my table lies a card received today from a gentleman and his wife who reside at Pau, an Austrian Baron de Brennecke, who was in Washington while we were there. They often visit me and are very accomplished people, plain and so elegant, and consequently so unassuming. I fear that I am wearying you with so long a letter. Would that I could see you again, but I am allowed tranquillity here, and am not harassed by a demon. I wrote Mrs. Ellen Johnson, 1425 Butterfield Street, recently a letter. Will you see her? Do write me without the least delay. I am very anxious to hear from you. Remember me to the judge. Always your affectionate, deeply grateful friend, Mary Lincoln. Write and tell me everything. M.L. Paul France, Bassis, Pyrenees, April 12th, 1877. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, it has been some time since I had the pleasure of receiving your most welcome letter, yet, notwithstanding the lapse of time, you have been frequently in my thoughts and most fondly remembered. I have been much saddened within the last 2 months with hearing from my sister, Mrs. Edwards, of the loss of 2 sweet little grandchildren. One, the only child of Charles Edwards, a very bright and promising little girl, and Albert, the other brother, has lost the little girl, both with scarlet fever. Naturally, it has cast a great gloom over their households. When you wrote me, you had just returned from Springfield, and General Logan was in a state of great suspense. I suppose he consoles himself with the hope of the possible future presidency. Speaking of these things, my dear friend, why is it with your husband's great legal ability, noble heart, and name, why do you not turn your attention to securing that place on the Supreme Bench at Washington for him? You, with your great talents and diplomacy, could so well arrange affairs. Judge B is far too modest for the age in which he lives, and so much care and work would be spared him by the change. A wife can do so much for her husband, which you have undoubtedly done. It would gratify me so much to have the vacant place assigned him. I believe a few quiet words would secure it. You know how greatly I prize you both, and what interest I take in you and yours. When you see Mrs. Ellen Johnson, please say to her that I wrote her in November last, and not a line have I yet received from her. I suppose your dear daughter, to whom present much love, still continues in college. Only a very great man will be your husband, will be her husband, be assured. I hope soon to hear from you. Please address me by name and write. Poste Restante on left-hand corner. Remember me to the judge. I remain your affectionate friend, Mary Lincoln. I write this very hastily. My address is Mrs. Abraham Lincoln, Pau, Basses, Pyrenees, France. Sorrento, Italy, April 22nd, 1878. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, in the quiet of this beautiful place, I have been thinking a good deal of you, and have concluded to inflict a letter upon you, so that I too may not be entirely forgotten by yourself and the judge. A few weeks since I came round by sea from Marseilles to Naples, and it was my second visit to the latter place. End of photo. Within the last few years, I remained there only a week, but will return there in a few days. It is my season of sadness, and Naples, with its noise, was unendurable. With guidebook in my hands, some years since I visited all places that were considered to be of interest, and it is well for me that I did so, for I could not interest myself now as I did then in visiting each place. My heart was then filled with great sorrow, but since that time the crushing hand of bereavement has been laid so heavily upon me that it is only by a strong effort of will that I revisit places. I went to Herculaneum before I left Naples, also to the castle of St. Elmo, stopped at the Hotel de Rupe, which commands the finest view of Vesuvius and the Bay of Naples, but nothing equals, I think, the charming scenery of Sorrento. Even Mrs. Stowe's imaginative pen has scarcely done it justice. In front of my hotel, in full view, lies a grand chain of mountains, Vesuvius rising above them all, the bay in full view, and orange and lemon grove within these grounds, trees bowed down with their fruit, of so much larger size and better flavor than we have with us. The villa of Aristides was the sole object of interest to me at Herculaneum. Close up some day your dear daughter's books, bring her to these lands so filled with historical associations, have the judge accompany you for a rest, and you will find yourself so well repaid. For down for your journey, my beloved husband and myself for hours would sit down and anticipate the pleasant time we would have in quietly visiting places and in halting as such spots as this when his official labors were ended. God works in such a mysterious way, and we are left to bow to his will. But to some of us, resignation will never come. But perhaps for the tears shed here, compensation will succeed the grief of the present time. Would that I could see you all once more, for you are very dear to my heart. My sister, Mrs. Edwards, writes me quite frequently, and today I have written her a long letter. When you receive this letter, dear Mrs. Bradwell, sit down and write me a long one in reply. Please remember me to your family. If you remember, you are owing me a letter. What has become of Mrs. Ellen Johnson? She was a faithful friend to me, and I hope she is doing well. I wrote her a year since and have received no reply. I miss her good washing. I miss her good washing. I assure you, when you see her, remember me to her. Tell her I have a whole trunk of clothes for her. She will understand. Do write, my dear friend. Direct to Pau, France, Basses, Pyrenees. Poste Restante, always your affectionate friend, Mary Lincoln. Pau, France, July 4th, 1878. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, your letter of July 2nd is just this moment received. I am greatly surprised that you have not received the letter I wrote you at least 10 days since from Vichy. In reply to your most welcome one, dated Chicago, making the pleasant announcement that you were to sail for Europe on the 12th of June, I addressed the letter to the care of Mrs. Walker, Beverly, England. You did not give me the name of your hotel. Please inquire at the post office at Beverly for it. I am so anxious to see you and would go anywhere to meet you, but have been laid up in bed for the last 2 days with boils under my left arm. Address me post restaurant Paul, France. I find on my return the usual beautiful hotel closed for the summer season, where I have stopped, but am in plain, comfortable quarters at Hotel de l'Europe. I cannot contain myself this solitary 4th of July, knowing that you are so near and yet so far. It cannot be that you are not to receive the letters I write you. My very, very dear friend, the Vichy waters did me no good. However, I was not very much in need of them. Write me at once. I cannot do anything today. My thoughts are so much with you. Very affectionately, your friend, Mary Lincoln. Pau, France, July 6th, 1878. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, by this time you must be receiving my frequent letters. In looking over your last letter, I perceive that the date is June 27th. I wrote you on the 4th of July. Where are you now? An Englishman told me on yesterday that Beverly was in Yorkshire, consequently not so near London as I had supposed. Vichy waters have brought out several disagreeable boils under my left arm, and the pain extends over my whole body. With the very, very warm weather we are having, I am not spending a very pleasant time. Do write me at once, my dear friend. I am so anxious to hear from you. You are well aware how near you are to my heart. You have no friend, I believe, who loves you half so well as myself. I write with difficulty owing to the pain. Affectionately yours, Mary Lincoln. Pau, France, July 19th, 1878. My dear Mrs. Bradwell, this morning's mail brought me an envelope enclosing 2 letters for yourself from Beverly. Of course, I will retain them until you arrive. I cannot express to you with what pleasure I look forward to your coming. I hope when you receive this letter your health will have improved. I fear with your indisposition you have seen very little of London. However, in the future you have time enough for it all. It is a pity you did not bring your very sweet and interesting daughter over with you. I am longing greatly to see you, my very dear friend, and I am sure you will feel anxious for your 2 letters when you write to your dear noble husband. Please present my kindest regards. I feel very tenderly attached to yourself and family. The intolerable heat prevents my inflicting a long letter upon you. When you come, we will direct our way very soon to the beautiful Pyrenees. 4 hours by sail brings us to the heart of them. I trust the breeze is refreshing you this morning, which Pau does not dream of. Do write me at once. Ever yours, most affectionately, Mary Lincoln. Mary Todd Lincoln's last will and testament, July 23rd, 1873, signed by Mary Lincoln and witnessed by James and Myra Bradwell. In the name of God, amen. I, Mary Lincoln, of the city of Chicago, county of Cook, and state of Illinois, widow of the good and lamented Abraham Lincoln, the martyred president of the United States, realizing the uncertainty of life and the certainty of death, being of sound mind and memory, and having $56,000 in United States registered bonds, a house, and a lot in the city of Chicago in the state of Illinois, known as I don't know if that's a typo, of Illinois, known as number 375 West Washington Street, valuable clothing, jewelry, and various other articles of property which I wish to dispose of at and after my decease. Do make and publish this my last will and testament in manner following, that is to say, I give, devise, and bequeath unto my beloved son, Robert T. Lincoln, my house and lot known and described as follows, to wit, number 375 West Washington Street, in the city of Chicago, in the county of Cook, and state of Illinois, but in case my said son, Robert T. Lincoln, shall die without having sold and conveyed said house and lot, then, and in that event, said house and lot shall be equally divided between the children of my said son, Robert T. Lincoln, as they each arrive at the age of 21 years. End first photo page of the United States. In witness whereof, I, Mary Lincoln, the testatrix, have this 23rd day of July, A.D. 1873, affix my seal and subscribe my name to this, my will, consisting of 9 pages. Mary Lincoln. We do hereby certify that the alive named testatrix, Mary Lincoln, signed, sealed, and declared the above instrument to be her last will and testament in our presence, and we at her request and in her presence subscribe our names then as witnesses on this 23rd day of July, AD 1873, James B. Bradwell, Myra Bradwell, Toss B. Bradwell, which I assume is Thomas. And that's the end of that. I don't know how many pages are left, but an hour and 16 minutes later, I'm not about to read them. Yeah, there's a good 30 minutes of reading left, so that'll be all for now, bruvs. Goodbye, bruvs. Goodbye.